And so why don't you just tell us your name and where you live and sort of, you know, who were you before you discovered the pleasure teaching?
Hi, my name is Claire Molinar and I live in Paris. I'm a indigo coach and I teach unique self coaching as well. And before I dove into the pleasure course, my relationship to pleasure was vague and not very, I didn't really have a sense of what pleasure really meant in my life. And pleasure was something I was seeking outside of me.
Mm-hmm. So as a coach, you know, and knowing that the pleasure map focuses specifically at level 2 on our relations and the intimacy with other people, how has working pleasure into your life and your work affected, say, all of your relations, or particularly even in your coaching?
The pleasure teachings have actually brought pleasure back home. So they've somehow allowed me to live pleasure, to be pleasure, to experience pleasure as from a deep sense of self. And so this has kind of this is informing the way I work with people now. And so not only do I experience pleasure more fully in how I show up in the world, but it seems that it's transpiring in my relationships and with my clients and in my work. I'm kind of inviting people to be in their pleasure. It's kind of it works like a reflection, you know, as within, so without. So yes, there has been a deep internal change in my way of inviting pleasure in others, just because my relationship to pleasure has changed.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to ask you, that was so fabulous and you got so animated during that, and the picture sort of froze a little bit about halfway through. So would you mind saying that again? How pleasure has affected your coaching and just all of your relationships and intimacy with all of your relationships?
Yes. It's interesting how that works. I would not have been able to actually make it happen, but I notice as I think about it that by changing my relationship to pleasure and internet and the work that I did with pleasure has allowed me to okay, I'll start again. It's difficult to redo something. Yeah, I just don't even remember how I said that.
Right. Well, you know, so imagine the beautiful Zen calligraphy and that, you know, it's perfect in the moment. So don't try to redo it.
Yeah, so right. So please ask me the question again and I'll go back to it.
Yeah. So, so level 2 in the pleasure map is about intimacy and our relationships and our awareness of pleasure in our relationships. So how has that impacted you in your own life personally, and particularly in say your coaching with other people?
Yeah, so my relationship to pleasure, the fact that my relationship to pleasure changed and became a way of being, has in fact impacted not only my relationships in my personal life, but even the way I work with people. Somehow there's something in me now that's inviting others to find their own pleasure, and so I feel it. I feel that it's because it's coming out of me, And so it's an invitation, and it's being reflected in others. So because I'm living it, people are invited to live it for themselves, and somehow I find the resonance in them, and I invite it in. So it's a beautiful, it's such a beautiful and true relationship to pleasure. It just feels so right.
And so level 5 of the pleasure map, well, the first 3 levels focus on the body and relationships and sort of work and standing for a cause. And then we move to the enlightened states of pleasure. And level 4 is the true self. And then level 5 is the actual pleasures of the unique self. And I think you, of all people, are really positioned to talk beautifully about how bringing pleasure into your experience of the unique self and your teaching the unique self has transformed you.
So when you take that teaching of pleasure from an experience of true self to the experience of the unique self, this teaching really takes it to a whole dimension. And for me, the way I live it is that I really experience that pleasure at that level is really my gift, my unique gift to life, to God, whatever you want to call it. That it really feels like it's my gratitude that's being expressed through my pleasure as a gift to God, and God is delighting in my pleasure. So it's kind of it's a first person and a second person experience of pleasure. It's a gift, and it's just an unfolding. It's life unfolding. Actually, it's life finding its own expression through my pleasure. And so it's really it's alive, and it's never the same.
What would you say the biggest surprise that you've noticed in your life since you've really started studying the pleasure Dharma?
For me, as a true self practitioner, I was really involved in a very classic traditional Zen practice, where I would experience peace and stillness, and I thought that was pleasure. And then, of course, I'd experienced pleasure in my life, but I never really had that realization before this teaching. I never really put this two together. There was a split, even though, being in practice made me happier in my life. Somehow there was a split. And so this teaching on pleasure brought the split between emptiness and fullness, the split between, form and no form together. And so there's no more split.
Mm-hmm. So who would you say you are in your life now that you've incorporated the pleasure teachings into your life and into your work? How have you been transformed in the most way?
I feel more alive. I mean, this is really the essence of it. I just feel more alive. I have a deeper sense of my unique taste, my unique intimate sense of what pleasure is. And it's not something that I can define. It's just something that I experience moment to moment. And I'm just more intimate with my aliveness and my life.
Beautiful. That's all I need. That was perfect. That's beautiful.
Was it okay? Yeah.
Yeah, you did great. I knew you would. So,
Yeah. Well, you know, it's easy when you talk about these things and that are so so exciting.
it is. It's a little challenging because you think, oh, it's so subtle. Just that thought of, oh, I'm in big mind, but what's the pleasure of big mind? And
Yeah.
it's so subtle, but I mean, it's like Dorothy going from black and white into the Technicolor of Oz with just that question.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's the step from from true self to unique self. That is you know, the move, and it is subtle because it's the becoming. It doesn't stay. You know, it's not the being. Being doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming is never the same.
I wanted to ask you, I had studied voice dialogue extensively in the 90s. And then when I met Gimpo in 2008, and then Diane very quickly afterwards, I really saw, oh my God, completely,
Right.
It's like it exploded.
Voice dialogue. Yeah.
Right. So voice dialogue is very much a regular practice, and I facilitate the, big mind, and I use in tapping, EFT tapping layered on top of it and through it. So I do the voice dialogue a lot. So I can very clearly go into the Divine Mother, the stillness of pure being. I can go to unique self and all the different flavors of that. Do you still practice in that way?
No, I don't practice. Well, I mean, yes, I do. In my individual coaching sessions, I could practice voice dialogue because it just seems appropriate in that moment, but I don't do it systematically. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it happens often, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And when I use voice dialogue, it can be a voice of the separate self, and it can also be a transcendent voice. It depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Mark talks so much about the unique self, and I think you and I are at a certain advantage because we've experienced it many times with the voice dialogue piece of it. So I wonder how many people have actually had a genuine experience of a unique self. They might be talking about it and have an intellectual sense of it. So.
Yeah, well, I work with people in this emergence, so I know relatively a lot of people that have that experience because these are the people that I work with, and this is what I work towards with them.
Yeah.
So, and of course, unique self is a certain is an experience that you can have at a very subtle level or a very embodied level.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a whole, there's a large scope of embodiment of unique self, and we're all at a certain, somewhere on that emergence,
right.
on a good day and on a bad day, on a good moment or on a bad moment.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes I'm in my separate self, and sometimes I'm in true self, and sometimes I'm in unique self. So, yeah. Well, that's Mark and I are working on a book on embodying the unique self. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. That's great.
Right. And I'm with the CEO of Hay House actually here in Durango right now, and he's interested in the book. So
awesome.
That could be very exciting. Well, there was a thought I had when you were speaking, but it's gone. So just thank you so much. These videos should be ready in about 2 weeks or so. So we'll send you the advanced link so you can see yourself and how we've edited and created this.
Great. So it'll be like kind of like something like a testimonial for the course, right? On the sales thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're using it, as a testimonial for the course. So, or the pleasure Dharma, as Adam likes to call it. So,
yeah, and so you have like different people speaking to their experience of the course, and
right. And the introduction videos are really all about levels 1, 2, and 3, but we wanted to then add a taster to true self, unique self, and evolutionary unique self. So, because those they're covered in the course, and they'll be covered in the webinar later. But
okay, great. Okay, Alan, it was great, connecting, and I'm looking forward to other ways to connect, and I'd love to learn more about, your approach and how you work with people, and what what are the things that that you do.
okay, yeah. Well, that was one thing I was going to say is, I work in groups. I really like the group work,
You do.
and so yeah, and I always take the group to true self and unique self. So it's just amazing to be in a group of people, especially when they've never experienced the work before, and that light bulb goes on, and you can see that their nervous system is being rewired with this whole new awareness. So yeah, it's one of the most exciting things in my world is to be holding the space for that and witness it happening. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Claire. Blessings to you. Have a fabulous evening. And
Bye. Take care.
Paris.
Bye bye. So how do I